And welcome back to JKLIVE live right here, Citizen Television, talking to the youth. That's right, we'll talk about the alternative view here in the house. Nerima, what's your other names?
Ojua.
Yeah, that one.
Why did you say that?
You're the CEO of Siasa Place.
Yes, I am.
Well done.
I've been for the last 10 years, yeah.
10 years? Mohammed Abdullahi, he calls himself a law student, but this is the grand mullah in the making. Right next to him is Gloria Wawera. She's the CEO of Nairobi
National Youth Council. Acting CEO.
Acting.
Yes.
How many months, days?
Let's not put a number to that, but if I were honest, 3 months and 4 days.
Guy. And of course, Casmuel Makoure, last seen diving into the Twin Towers at Nation Center.
You have to complete it, and currently representing the ODM Youth League.
Yeah, okay. By the way,
Yeah.
you were in Addis Ababa this weekend.
Yes, I
for
was.
Baba's, well, the vote.
Addis, yeah.
How was it? Tell us.
I mean, Addis was beautiful. You know, as the diplomatic capital of Africa, the proverbial diplomatic capital, there was a lot of activity happening. And we went there to stand in solidarity with the Kenyan candidates. And we had an election. We went well for the first round. And we unfortunately had to withdraw on the 6th. The results did not favor us. And now we're back to continue building the country.
Yes, well, be honest, man.
Yes.
You guys lost. It was miserable.
We withdrew from the election.
It was like a heavyweight match between Tyson Fury or whatever it is, right? That went 6 rounds. And then in the 6th round, the referee or the trainer threw the towel. You know how you throw the towel?
Right. No, it wasn't the case. I think, and then it's not you guys, it's Kenya. He was a Kenyan candidate. You might have all your reservations against the Right Honorable Prime Minister, but at the end of the day, he was fronted to Addis Ababa as the Kenyan candidate. So it's a collective loss if we were to objectively speak about it.
It's so diplomatic. You should have been a diplomat. Huh? Well, Gloria Wawera, your thoughts about what happened in Addis this weekend?
I think it was a wonderful show on our part as a country. We fronted a candidate who has been in our political space for a while and who is often referred to as the enigma of Kenyan politics. I think Raila Odinga is representative of a lot of our aspirations as a country, and I think we put up a great show as a nation. We fought hard, but as many things happen, sometimes you're not successful. We live to try again another day. So I think Kenya did very, very, very well.
Mohammed Abdullahi, I'm sure you have a different view.
Sure, Jeff. Yes, I do.
Go on.
I think Kenya lost, and it lost embarrassingly. I do not want to think that we put up a spirited fight or anything else. But the question that I have is, was it a vote for the Djibouti candidate, or was it a vote against Kenya? I strongly want to believe that it was a vote against Kenya and what Kenya has stood for on the continent in the past few years. A country that has been known to be hosting peace and mediation talks for the whole region is now one that hosts militias which are trying to establish second governments or alternative governments in their home countries and at the welcome of this country. So I think it was a vote against Kenya, a very dramatic vote by the continent against Kenya, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, Nerima, you agree?
I agree, and I find it interesting that we've sat next to each other.
And those government people are together over there.
They're together over there and we're here. But, you know, I agree because, first of all, with the travel, it was just too much. Too many people went to Addis.
500 plus.
Too many people.
Too much noise.
I mean, I've been to Addis several times.
And the rest.
It's a very quiet city.
Yes.
And there we were with all our pomp, and it was too grand. Yeah. We're talking about the expenses, the issues that are already happening here. And, you know, I mean, they went with a lot of negative energy. And it's the same thing. We were in a conversation with Cass, I think, a week before. And I was like, I'm not seeing it. And so it played out. So, yeah, not surprised.
However, I think if we were to just think about it objectively, there could be diplomatic mishaps that would have happened, and a lot of the time I see people front this as a failure on Honorable Raila Odinga's part, but he put up a spirited fight. We cannot discredit him for that. We might have our reservations, and the people of Kenya might have their reservations against Baba, but we cannot deny that the Honorable Prime Minister put up a spirited fight. Yeah, he did the thing.
Kasman, let me ask you real quick.
Yes.
Why were people celebrating here? Like, you know, if it was Harambee Stars who had gone to the World Cup, the whole country would have rallied around Harambee Stars. Why weren't people rallying around Raila in that way?
I think we also have to be honest and be alive to the fact that there are several aspects of local politics at play. This comes at a time when the Right Honourable Prime Minister has presented himself as a candidate, and there has been a sustained rhetoric and a sustained attack on his persona. And the celebration comes after, it comes under a backdrop of the impeachment of the former Deputy President, who I think was unfit to hold office for all intents and purposes.
You're changing the subject now.
Yes, no, I'm coming.
You're changing the subject.
No, I have to give you the backdrop because the celebrations do not come out of nowhere. Because we are coming, and if I may speak freely, the same country that is pretending to be in glee and jubilated for the Prime Minister's loss is praising the former president for his exploits. They're even considering fronting him as a UN position. So I think there's a backdrop, especially if you're thinking about it locally. There could be several factors about the international aspect, but locally it lies on a backdrop that is rather embarrassing, that if we strip down, there could be several nuanced issues, but the big backdrop is political revenge, there's tribalism, there's unmet political expectations, and there was just the fact that people were uncomfortable with the fact that he gets to make his own decisions.
Nerima.
No. I'll bring it back locally.
Go on, bring it back.
In the last few months, we had Besije abducted.
In broad daylight on
Nairobi,
Riverside Drive.
in Nairobi. And, you know, as Mohammed has mentioned, Nairobi is known for the capital of peace talks. You know, even with Sudan, we've seen that. With South Sudan, we've seen that. With DRC, we've seen that. And even bring it back, we've seen Maria, almost an attempted abduction. Tanzanian, here in Kenya. So there are a lot of things that when we look at our country and how we have evolved over the last 2 years, we have been a refuge, especially for communities and countries around us that come here for that security as refugees. We've been a hub, a home for safety, freedom of expression. But we've seen that change. And even the kind of politics that we're talking about within the AU and the kind of support that they would like from a country like ours, it's time for us to reflect as Kenyan people and our foreign relations. How are we doing with our own neighbors? How are we doing in this continent? And frankly speaking, a lot of decisions, Kenya puts itself first. Yeah. Kenya puts itself first. Yeah. We have even had Julius Malema say how Kenya, even with the support of Israel over the Gaza issue, we are not Pan-African. And so maybe it's a good moment to sit back, reflect on our relations. I think that's what last week showed us.
Mohammed, that's what you were talking about earlier on, right?
Yes, Jeff.
Yes.
And I think I am completely different from Kasmal. Because the reduction that it was a failure on the part of Raila Amolo Odinga and people are celebrating the failure of the former Prime Minister, I think is one that is wrong. This was a failure by Kenya. He was Kenya's candidate. So we must look at it from that angle, that why wasn't Kenya's candidate successful at the continental front? And I think it's a failure of Kenya's foreign policy, Kenya's diplomatic movements across the continent, as Nerima says, of course, how we relate with other Africans. We've tarnished the whole name. So I think this attempt to try and reduce it, to change the narrative that it was a failure on the individual of Raila Odinga, or because local politics were at play and all of those things, I think is one that is not fair. I think it was a failure of Kenya's diplomacy.
Let me ask you real quick, Mohammed. 8 years ago, almost 8 years ago, in 2017, Amina Mohammed, candidate for the same position, and she was way up top. I mean, she was ranked way up. She didn't get it.
Yes.
Why?
I think same thing again. We've been accused back then. There were reports that came out. Even before the election happened, Kenya had already laid out the red carpet. They had booked massive hotels in Addis, and the champagne was already poured in anticipation of a celebration of Kenya's win, which was just far-fetched. Something else also happened, which I think was very important. So we must look at it as countries voting along their interest, and that is what is happening. So the Anglophones generally, or the Anglophone-speaking countries generally voted together. Majority of them, East Africa and South Africa. The Francophones and the Arabs generally also vote alongside each other. What happened was, days to the election, Jeff, a letter came out of SADC. That letter was probably out of naivety, I would assume, dismissed by Kenya's high-ranking diplomats as just another attempt to sway the vote at the last minute. But it was more than that. And we've seen that it was more than that. And there are things that Kenya has been doing, probably in DRC or across the region, that must have come into play with that SADC letter. So I think it's a failure of Kenya's diplomacy. It's a failure of how Kenya positions itself within the continent.
Gloria Owera, you must admit there were many mishaps. Like Casimir just said, there were some mishaps that some things we could have done better in Addis.
I'll have to disagree. I think what we suffered was a failure, and that was expected. We put forth a candidate, the odds were always 50-50. I'd like to ask all of you, would you like to believe that in the event our candidate won, there would have been no jubilation? There would have been jubilation and a very high stake in terms of national pride. This moment would have been particularly different, and so would have this conversation. So could we improve? There's always room for improvement. But did we put up a spirited campaign? Did we traverse the continent, speaking to peers and allies and friends? And is it expected that people will vote along their lines? Yes, perhaps what we need to do is galvanize a better coalition next time. But I don't think it's an indictment of our efforts as a country. I genuinely think that we did put in a big spirited effort, and there was a chance. It was always 50-50.
It wasn't. We failed miserably.
I'd have to disagree with you. Allow me to disagree.
That's fine. Casimir, you talked about diplomatic mishaps. What did you mean?
It might not be in my position to speak to those, but from a layman's perspective, just in retrospect, because I've gone to see what are the loose ends that we would have tied, because the mishap was not on the side of the candidate. The candidate, which was the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, put up a spirited campaign. He honored all the invitations to various countries, and he traversed the continent. We cannot fault him. We cannot say that he did not put up a fight. However, there were, I would say, we would have lobbied a bit more around the diplomatic core, because you see that Djibouti did about 3 what I call them like dinners or feats for diplomats. They were more in touch with the foreign ministers and the foreign envoys, and I think we focused more on like intergovernmental lobbying, and granted, that was maybe a different tact. And I think leading up to the election, I saw about 3 of those. But again, I do not know if that's what caused the win. But we also have to acknowledge that there are stances that we have taken as a country which sort of disfavor us within the continent, and this we have to squarely lay the blame on the Kenyan government.
Does that include DRC?
That includes DRC. That includes the West Sahara. Was it the Sahrawi situation in 2022? Yes. That includes the abductions that my colleagues are talking about. And if you see what's happening, I would have expected to see the Ugandan representative at the very least there, but I did not see President Kaguta Museveni there. And remember, he was here on the first week of January, and was even crowned as a Luo elder. So I think there could have been more that is done, and this is maybe a wake-up call to our foreign policy, that it is time for our government to stop playing reactionary politics. As the young people, we might point out things, we might point out issues and policy gaps and loopholes, and there have been a lot of writings on the wall. It's just that they chose not to filter through the noise and play the game of hubris. We could have done better. You cannot, in all honesty, tell me that the things that Kenya is being accused of, Djibouti cannot be accused of. You cannot lie to me that it is a more stable democracy. You cannot lie to me that Mahmoud was a better candidate because he's been foreign minister for about 20 years. I do not think that is a sign of a progressive democracy. We have to be honest. We might have our reservations about our country, but we cannot say that they are any way better. They were better at lobbying, but when we talk about the loss, and that's why I hate to term it as so, despite it being unfortunately the case, that we fronted by all means the better candidate. So we might have to explore and rethink our foreign policy, the people who handle this, because it's a matter of hard-nosed diplomacy. And I just think that we are still making the mistake as a country of making political appointments in places where we should be making highly technical appointments.
Mohammed Abdullah, you're making some notes there right now, so you must have something to say.
Sure, and Jeff, just to start you off, I think it's only people within Kasmal's corner who think that Kenya fronted the better candidate. When it mattered, the continent chose the better candidate. That candidate is today the chairperson of the African Union Commission. Secondly, Jeff, Kasmal also argues that a lot of the things which have been accused, or a lot of the fingers which have been pointed at Kenya, you cannot, in all fairness, argue that Djibouti and those other countries have not been pointed similar fingers, at least. Jeff, Djibouti is not accused of meddling in the political affairs of Sudan. If anything, there was an IGAD process, I think, started in about 2023. It had 4 countries. It had Kenya, Djibouti, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. Kenya, and then President Ruto was the chair of this committee. They only had 1 meeting in Addis, attended by Kenya's president and Ethiopia's prime minister, deserted by South Sudan's president and Djibouti president, accusing Kenya of not being a fair player. Similarly, if you were to bring warring parties to come to a table and you propose that you're going to be the mediator, both parties must see you as a fair arbiter, as a fair mediator in that conflict. Kenya has not been seen as a fair mediator in that affair. Djibouti, which Kasmal, or which fronted the other good candidate, the successful candidate, is not accused of those things. It's not accused of backing rebels and taking positions in very key conflict issues, which I must point out, Jeff, is a shift, horrible shift for Kenya's image. This capital hosted the Mbagathi talks in 2004, which led to the transitional federal government in Somalia. This country hosted the talks which led to the successful birth of South Sudan. That was our image. That image is lost, Jeff. That is an unfortunate scenario.
And then hosting the RSF as a parallel government, that doesn't augur very well, does it?
Absolutely not, Jeff. The red carpet was rolled out to them. They've been given Kenyatta International Convention Center. This is the premier convention center to come and declare things that they could not do in Khartoum, things that they can't do in Port Sudan, things that they can't do anywhere. They can't even probably do it in Darfur. That is something that they're coming to do in Nairobi. So we cannot be seen as a fair arbiter in all of those things. And it's sad. This country has hosted refugees from Somalia for 30 plus years. Yep. This country has hosted refugees from Congo, Burundi, all of these places. We know the effect of war. We know the adversity that comes with war. So if we are going to be a party in a conflict that is going to affect the Sudanese people, we're doomed.
God help us all. Nerima, you're nodding. You're in agreement.
Yes, in so much agreement. I don't even have anything else to add because, you know, even what's happening in Sudan, it's very, very sad. When women kill themselves to avoid rape, and we're talking about you know, over 200 cases of deaths, and it's not even being documented by the media. I don't think a lot of the Kenyan population understand just that, how bad and severe that conflict is and what this means, especially since they were talking about, you know, announcing this, you know, huge launch on Friday. So it means a lot for the country where we are right now, and I totally agree with what Mohammed has just shared. Yeah.
Casimo, what do you think?
I think it would be rather unfair for me to speak on the behest of people whose policies I do not understand on behalf of the people who govern this country. I come here as a representative of the ODM Youth League, and we are very clear in our positions that we are against any sort of genocide. We are for the total liberation of our people, but the reduction of our conversations to making this as though we are polarized. We all agree here that we do not want any human rights violations. We all agree here that on this panel, on this bench, and if you're watching, that here we affirm life. And I think us trying to make issues of human rights seem as though there could be some people who support genocides and whatnot. If there are people, because Kenya has pronounced herself every once in a while ever so wrongly about certain issues, we have called those issues out. So I think we would make more progress, because these are things which we have as a collective agreement that some of these things are wrong. In advancing the youth conversation, then I think you could be able to host diplomats so that they could expound further why they are doing the things they're doing. Because right now this is beyond our ken.
No, it's
and
not.
I'm in muddy waters, because I am neither a diplomat, neither am I a government employee.
Speaking of youth, you're not a government employee, but ODM is in government, right?
ODM is not in coalition with the government.
Come on, Caswell.
Come on. Me, Jeff, I believe that this show prides itself in fact-checking and fact-finding. And I've seen severally when people have made claims or allegations that they've been held to account. So I dare you to hold me to account and show me an agreement between the Orange Democratic Movement and the current ruling party of the country.
So why do Gen Zs think that you betrayed them yourself?
I cannot speak to that.
Oh,
I can speak to the people who
say something.
The only people who I betrayed.
They think you betrayed them.
The only people who I betrayed are tribalists. The only people who I betrayed are people who think that some people's sole purpose is to go to the front lines and die while other people enjoy the spoils of war. And the only other people who I betrayed are the people who believe in the business of grant writing, in the business of protesting, perpetual protests without the sight of change in mind. And speaking of which, part of the people I betrayed are you hosted one of them, and one of them actually here on your show made fun of my mental health. This is a person who stole money that was meant for mobilization. This is a person who, and I'm ready to prove this. I wish that she'll file a lawsuit after this statement. She stole money that we had meant for mobilization for the people. If we are going to do this, those are the kind of people I betrayed. I betrayed career activists. I betrayed people who believe that our core function is to take the children of the working poor to the front lines while we lounge in hotels and cafes while sipping coffee and waiting for the 4 o'clock, 1 o'clock prime time news so that we can come and elucidate and speak ever so flowery English while the children of the working poor are dead. The people I betrayed believe in us going to protest without a clear end in mind and having innocent children shot. And all we do is drape flags over their coffins and send their parents 10,000 shillings and chant revolutionary songs and chant down with the current regime down. The people I betrayed are the people who by day they chant down with American imperialism, by night they are seeking audience with the American embassy. The people I betrayed chanted down with Meg Whitman down and in the evening wanted to have dinner at her residence. The people I betrayed are equally selfish people, and I keep on saying this, that we have to be truly honest about our left, because our left is just as rotten as the right. It's just as corrupt as the right, and there are several issues which we need to unpack, because there are very many people, many a young Kenyan who went to the street with an honest believing in this righteous and just cause that we were for. And so I cannot answer to those people. Those people who think that I betray them do not have any of my sympathies. They do not have any of my remorse, because I said, I speak as a person who donated my life to the struggle. This is no joke. I was not tweeting from my home. I came back to the media, I came to the media stations, and I was at the front lines. I gave my life to the struggle, so I know what it feels like to be a frontliner. And if we reduce this conversation to the whimsical claims and the whimsical ramblings of random users on social media, I think it is rather strange. I made a very conscious and public decision to join the largest progressive pro-people party, according to my analysis, at existence at that time, which is the Orange Democratic Movement Youth League. And that's, I will stand by till the day I die. I'll pay whatever price it cost.
Wow.
All right. Where do we go from here? Gloria Wawira?
Yes.
Let me ask you this. You are National Youth Council, right?
Yes.
And the youth, these youth, or younger than them, this Gen Zs, they want to get their IDs, the first thing. That's what they're looking for, is to get their IDs.
Yes.
And they're having a hard time doing that. What do you say to them?
First, to say that the National Youth Council is committed to amplifying youth voices. And there have been complaints about getting IDs. But to first reiterate that it is your right to get your ID. And in fact, the registration process is continuous. So I would encourage first for all young people to attempt to get an ID. Where there are challenges, and there may be delays here and there due to a myriad of things, including perhaps logistical challenges or thereabout, I am persuaded beyond a reasonable doubt that there's work going on to remedy that process. So it's a question of waiting, it's not a question of denying. Your ID is your right, you will get it. It's a question of time. So I see the clamor, but I'm not alarmed at all. I believe young people of this republic have enjoyed this right for a long, long time. So it's a question of curing any logistical delays that may be there, and I am persuaded and I am sure that the registrar is working on that, and sooner than later this little hitch will clear up.
Nerima, you don't agree?
No, I agree with what Gloria has said, but before I get into that, I just have to touch on something really small.
That Casimir said?
Yes, yes.
It was a lot of English. I forgot half of it.
Yes, yes. You've already forgotten.
Too much English.
You're getting old, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Where's Ayub? Where's Ayub?
I know. But, you know, there's a statement that he's made, and, you know, Cass, like, I agree with you. There are some people who definitely just need to be out of the space. I agree with you. But I can't sit here while you talk about also a friend of mine who I've known for a long time. So I just also wanted to share that in terms of there are a lot of very active and hardworking young Kenyans who are at the front line. And, you know, someone like her, she did lose her brother during the post-election violence. And there's a sense of pain that will never go for many people who continue to push for a better Kenya. So I just wanted to mention that because it just felt wrong for me to sit here while you say that about our friend.
But however, I have some pushback about that, because if we are going to raise...
Is that Waidera? Wajira?
Yes. However, if we're going to talk about that, I was displaced by the post-elections. We lost homes. I lost family members. And this is the thing which I'm going to say. We will not cheapen the lives. And this is why I keep on saying, if she can come on this show, for example, and speak about the thing. Because remember, this is a person I went to their home. This is a person, if I trust her with certain things in confidence, and I tell her that this is what I'm struggling with. This is a person whose grandfather I went to bury in their home.
It's fine.
This is a person whose children I have carried. So if she comes to embarrass me on television, I think it's rather unfair.
And I'm a friend.
Yes.
And what I say needs to be publicly open.
But this is the thing which Nerima, which I would want us to do. We cannot be selective.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
if I may come first to acknowledge the contribution of young people at the protests, as well as those who contribute in other fashions, to appreciate her demonstration friendship, but to also appreciate what Casimir is saying. It is one thing to protest, and it is a valid right. However, change happens in process, and young people need to put themselves in the process to get their voices heard and participate. It is one thing to protest, and I respect it and I acknowledge it. There's no taking away from that. But I hear what he's saying, which is, after all is said and done, Where is the change? The change is in getting young people elected. And he said
I think we're making light of the situation, because when she spoke of me, I was not here. And this is the thing which I'm saying. It cannot be that we will absolve certain people in the movement of recklessness and irresponsibility, and we hold others accountable. I think it's rather unfair that I am held to a higher standard than other frontliners. You, Nerima, know that there is a lot of things I am not saying about this movement, and I think I'm a fairly reasonable man. So because if I decided to spill beans about the movement, we would have no movement right now. So I'm choosing my words very carefully, and that came up out of a question that Jeff raised, and I was responding to a thing that was said on this very seat that I'm sitting on.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that if we will expect respect, we ought to give respect.
Okay, Kat.
Yes.
So back to the IDs and what we're currently doing at the moment. There's organizations like Kikau that are encouraging young people to register.
Are they being able to? Are they giving?
It's a struggle because the service charter for IDs actually says that you are supposed to get your ID within 25 days. We have written an official letter, and in terms of asking why the delay, we're seeing youth who are not having access to their IDs. Some of them taking 3 months, and some of them having to even bribe or facilitate the process so that they're able to get IDs. So it's IDs even is beyond, the voting, as you know, Gloria. It's about livelihoods. It's about opportunities. Because without an ID, how are you going to get a job? How are you even going to be, even if we're talking about a housekeeper or a cleaner, you need an ID. Someone needs to know your identity and who you are. So there is a backlog, and sometimes it appears to be a suppression.
If I may,
it appears to be a suppression.
I think the important thing here is to dissuade away from the notion that it's a suppression. And I think that's the challenge, the perception that it is, in fact, a suppression. It has happened before. It's happened with our passports. This is not a unique occurrence. It happens. What I am concerned about is the, for lack of a better word, sensitivity that it may be a suppression. I don't think we have gotten to a place, or there has been sufficient evidence for anyone to be particularly concerned. IDs have been issued, the process is ongoing, and until there is anything extenuating, I believe we shouldn't be too quick to judge. Let's allow the process to go on. I'm a big fan of process, Jeff. There is a process. You fill in, maybe it's 25 days, maybe it's 3 months, but you will get your ID. That's not in question.
Mohammed Abdullahi, you're holding your chin like you're in thoughts. You're in, your thoughts.
Yes, Jeff, thank you. Jeff, the ID issues, of course, Gloria would like to persuade us to think that it is not a suppression. But it begs the question, what good is a government that can issue you a plastic the size of 10 inches by 2 inches?
Yeah.
Really?
And by the way, now they're charging 1,000 shillings or something, right?
Exactly.
And it has an expiry date.
Exactly, Jeff.
And that's not unique.
Suppression.
IDs
come
in other
on.
jurisdictions have the same
I have mine in
features.
1984. I've never been charged.
Exactly. Suppression.
Exactly.
Because even by the time that 1,000 is not something that's cheap. We know people in Mombasa who have lost IDs. And they can't afford.
I think we need to stop being alarmist.
Oh, really?
We absolutely have to stop being alarmist. We must. These institutions are our own. I saw the graphic running down there that young people represent 70% of our country's demographic. What benefit is it to any government or any regime to not allow its young people opportunity?
But I think if...
Hold on. Mohammed hasn't finished his thought.
Apologies for interrupting.
Sorry, sir.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Yes. The thing is, one, as Nerima argues, of course, the 1,000 shilling, that is suppression. That is with the intent to deny a huge section of this country not access to IDs. People who live on below the poverty index, as the World Bank, $2 about there a day, is a huge percentage of this country. 70% of the population of this country is young people, but they end up also making 67% of those out of jobs, unemployed people. Now you add them the expense of having to part with 1,000 shillings to get a national identification card, a birthright in any essence. And of course, Jeff, if you may allow, I want to mention that people from my community and people who come from the regions that we come from, northern Kenya, have faced a secondary hurdle to access those identification documents.
Which is?
The what is it called?
Vetting.
The vetting, yes.
Yeah.
The vetting thing, which the president a few weeks ago signed the executive order to remove it. So I think we share in that burden. One, that there was an extra hurdle for people from those regions in accessing this very essential document. Any other hurdle introduced by the government, of course, should be taken by every Kenyan as one to suppress their right to get a national identification document. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. If there are logistical issues, again, I ask, what good is a government that can't give you a plastic the size of your palm?
A government that's working every day, every single day, to provide IDs for their youth, to create employment for them and to give them opportunity. So I think we really need, Jeff, and allow me to reiterate, at the risk of seeming biased, we really need to move away from the notion that everything or some things are conspiring in the absence of favor or to some malicious or misintent. Sometimes there are logistical delays. It happens. But there is evidence, and there are people, young people. I'm sure if we sampled our audience today, there are young people who've gotten their IDs this week. Isn't that evidence enough?
They didn't get it in a week. They probably waited like...
Yes, they waited, but their ID came, did it not? Question.
3 months.
If I may ask one question.
Been in office.
As long as I've been in office.
Yes, Jeff, if I may ask one question to Gloria.
Go, Mohammed.
Please, Gloria.
Yes.
Okay, logistical issues, that is why it is taking 3 months, a bit more, all of those things. What is the thinking behind needing to pay 1,000 shillings for your ID?
This thinking is not new.
What do you mean?
What is the challenge with paying for a service you receive from government?
What good are my taxes? What good are my taxes?
Case in point, let me think of, you go to, a lot of students go to university, yeah? And they pay school fees, some of them public, some of them private. You pay a specific charge. In fact, I think in most universities, it's 500 shillings for your ID card.
For university ID.
Your university card. Granted, your national ID is your birthright. But it is a service that's delivered at a cost.
Oh, Gloria,
so for service delivery to be
offered,
it has
an expiration date.
And this, again, Jeff, I repeat, is not new. In economies as progressive as Europe, they have expiring IDs.
No.
It is not absolutely new. It happens.
I have a social security card from America.
Yes. It's timeless.
Thank you.
It's timeless.
Thank you.
That is not to say there are no contexts where IDs expire or they are renewed. It absolutely happens. What I want us to dissuade us from is a notion that every move or every investment or every change or shift in policy or direction is malicious. Young people need to trust that services are going to be...
So you're saying trust the system?
Yes.
Kashmir, are you trusting the system?
I think we also have to be utterly
not
honest.
too much English, all right?
We have to be...
Keep it.
I have to answer this because this is rather important. We have to be pragmatic and absolutely honest. We cannot just... we owe Kenyans some decency. That we cannot tell them that any sort of movement is meaningful movement. An ID is your proof of citizenship. Your birth certificate does not prove anything.
No.
And if this is slow and this is the concern of the Kenyan youth, the government does not need to be defensive about it. Because if we are 75% of the population and we are saying that this is a particular pain point, we know that unemployment has ravaged us. We know that it's hard for very people to come by that 1,000 Kenyan shilling note. This is just, it's an open appeal to the government. And this is the thing which I wouldn't want us to be balkanized along whatever your persuasions are. We ought to agree on base level amounts of decency. We need to agree that on terms of rights, we cannot be political. In terms of things like IDs, and I say the reason why I agree with Narima and Mohammed and any other Kenyan who's concerned about the issue of IDs, it's gotten to the point where passports are coming out faster than the IDs, and that is a classist thing if I were to think about it, because by the time I'm getting a passport, I have access to an ID. So the work could most definitely be done around getting IDs. It cannot be that we are removing vetting from the northern frontier districts and we still do not have access to the IDs, despite the fact that we got new machines that will print the capacity of 200,000 more. There's work that could be done around our identification cards.
I can't believe Casmel just...
But that's what the Youth League stands for.
I can't believe
what do you mean? That's what we stand for.
Sided with Gen Z.
No.
All of a sudden, after abandoning Gen Z,
the Youth League
you're
is
back.
Squarely. No. I have never left the movement. The Youth League squarely fights for the exact same things I'm talking about. I keep on saying this, that the heart of the Orange Democratic Movement is the Republic of Kenya. It's... Just a moment. It's mined as the Constitution of Kenya of 2010 that my party fought for. Its lymphatic system are the needs of the Kenyans and our party constitution. Its nervous system are the pressing needs of the Kenyan. We are focused on the immediate as soon as possible total liberation of our people. And we enjoy and pride ourselves in a very simple principle that was introduced by Senator Kajwang, which I like to jokingly call the FLF principle: faithfulness, loyalty, and fidelity to the party. I do not know why we want to break factions of youth into different things. Why is it okay if there's a young person who's going to Amunyoro, but I cannot be in ODM? Why is it okay for a young person to be in the National Reconstruction Alliance and I cannot be in ODM? Why is it okay that people can be in DAP, Wiper, Roots, but I cannot be in the Orange Democratic Movement? I sit here saying that I have said it time without number that I have not the slightest apology to anyone who wants to infringe upon my democratic rights. And this is the problem that America faced with the intolerant left. Let us be careful that we, while looking for the liberation, do not turn into the very monster that we are trying to fight. Is it just me, or is this PLO just reborn in a new... It's a younger version of Raila Odinga.
Gloria, you were saying?
Borrowing cue from Caswell.
Yes.
The young people of this country are the heart of the country. And to that end, I think it's important, of all the things he said, he's persuaded me when he said, this is an appeal. I think this government has demonstrated its ability to listen. And when the North said that the inspections or vetting was causing challenges, the government listened. When the young people of the Republic did what was needful, they listened. So if at all the challenge is the cost, I believe there could be a mechanism to address it, even if temporarily. But for now, let us dissuade ourselves from the notion that every intervention, every change is malicious.
Ayub Abdid Kadir, you've been listening to this discussion, this conversation.
Well, questions, of course, we'll be sampling them, but two quick observations made and questions to Gloria and Caswell. How then, because the law anticipates automatic citizenship if you are born in Kenya. I mean, that's by birth notification. Thereafter, you should be facilitated by the paperwork. But you and Gloria should be responding to this. How then does the government do away with the vetting process which was in place? No justification whatsoever in law and the Constitution, but you're introducing a more strict measures or guidelines. The Minister of Interior published on the 10th of April 2024 guidelines. Now you will be required to go to the chief. He authenticates your paperwork. Then the guardians or the parents' thumbnails are received. You go back to the chief for, again, second verification. And then your paperwork will be submitted to the DCI and the National Intelligence Service. I mean, isn't this just not politics? Why would the government then play around with citizenship, which is guaranteed by the Constitution, making a right a privilege for some sections of Kenyans?
Gloria.
The government has not done that. This government, and thankfully the governments before it, have never done that.
Well, there was no justification. If you look at what was in place before and what was introduced now, clearly it's even more stricter, more punishing for Kenyans who are living along the lines. You speak about the Maasais, the Tesos, the Luyas along the border with Uganda, the Somalis along the Northern Frontier District. I mean, when will then citizenship be perceived as a right by the government than a privilege?
Citizenship is not a privilege, and this government does not deem it a privilege. Citizenship is your right. And I think there are measures in place, including the identification card, to grant you that. It is a process. You have your notification of birth, you then get your ID card, your birth certificate, and when you attain 18, you apply for your identification card. Well, there may be concerns, particularly around the northern front. I don't want to say northern frontier, but northern regions. But that's precisely why this regime took it upon itself to address those challenges. In fact, if I were you, I'd be looking at it as progressive. This regime has taken it upon itself to cure whatever challenges may have been there in place for certain regions. So no, this regime considers your ID, your citizenship, your birthright. And that's why we're making every effort to cure that. But also picking up on the timeline of IDs. I believe the PS for registration also mentioned that the reason why these new IDs are expiring, why they have a shelf life of 10 years, is because we are introducing microchips into them. And that will enable other services that will be offered digitally. So it's not, again, malicious. It's technology.
Huduma number never worked, Gloria.
Well,
do you have does anybody here have a Huduma number?
Did you register for your Huduma number?
I did.
You did register for your Huduma number?
I'm still waiting for it.
Well, we must be allowed then to also make errors. If the Huduma number did not work, the Maisha number is working today. Ask young people. They have Maisha numbers. And over and above of that, they have their IDs. So there's opportunity, there's progress being made. What I'm trying to do on this panel is to dissuade us from the notion that there is ever or this regime or this government would try to hurt its own citizens.
Are you saying we're too negative on you?
Yes, I am. I am saying that perhaps as a country, we've gotten too accustomed to complaining. I confessed recently on an interview in the morning and said, I'm a glass half full type of person. Perhaps it's a personality error, but I'm keen on counting the wins. For the northern parts of the country, that has since been removed. In terms of logistical concerns or the ability for young people to be heard, they have been heard, and there are measures being put in place to address any delays. So it's a question of when, not if. If it was a question of if, we would be flouting the Constitution. And I don't believe anyone is committed to flouting our Constitution. This regime and this government has demonstrated the willingness and the need to listen and respond to the concerns of young Kenyans, who, by the way, quantify 65% of our country.
Okay. Mohammed, you've been scribbling stuff on your notebook. What are you scribbling? What are you saying?
Jeff, let me get back to Kasmol first. Kasmol talks very gloriously and very beautifully of the Orange Democratic Movement.
No, but also I think let us not make jest of it, because this is very important. This is a leap forward. This is a leap forward, Jeff, and I think this is part of what I would like us to. Let's just. We do not need to be dramatic about this. I think that my role in the Orange Democratic Movement Youth League is to, as eloquently, as articulately, articulate the positions of the party.
Okay.
So if we make it Kizungu Mingi, then that seems like it's in jest, but I am taking this very seriously. In fact, if you give me a short break, I'll come with the merchandise. You know, I'm always walking around with merchandise from the party. So let's just skip it.
In the break, we'll do that. Mohammed, Maliza, your thoughts?
Yes, so I mean, no doubt that Kasmol strongly believes how good he spoke of ODM. Unfortunately, that is not the reality. Those ideals, which we all love, which he has spoken very beautifully about the Orange Democratic Movement, are only the ideals of the Orange Democratic Movement when they're out of power. The people's concerns for the Orange Democratic Movement, they're only concerned about the people. They're only concerned about the cost of living. They're only concerned about abductions. They're only concerned about every evil that the government of the day commits only when they're out of government. And I'll tell you why. In 2017 or thereabouts, I think, the Orange Democratic Movement got into a handshake with the then Jubilee regime in power. You remember Capitol Hill, you remember the saying Mosho Moja. You would go there and you're sinless now. Everything has been sorted. You would go get your stuff done. So those ideals are only the ideals of the Orange Democratic Movement for as long as it suits them and their agenda to get into government.
But the Kenyan voter does not care for those as well, because they would have put us in power. We have never been in power as the Orange Democratic Movement, sir. Please be fair to us.
To that as well, the Orange Democratic, and you asked him, are you guys in government? The Orange Democrat, and he asked you, please provide like a write-up or a contract or an agreement. Yes, the Orange Democratic Movement might not be in government de jure, but the Orange Democratic Movement is in government de facto.
Wakili.
You like?
Yes, just a minute. Okay. No, I don't. De facto. 3 or thereabouts, 4 of their senior members are cabinet ministers. They sit in the cabinet of today. So this idea that you must present, if anything, we understand that you can be at the heart of government and you have no write-up to support you. That was displayed by Rigathi Gachagwa's fallout. He said that if only thing, I and the people of Central Kenya are the people who did not ask for a contract with this government. Here is what the people of Western Kenya through Ford and through Amani negotiated. We are only the ones who did not negotiate. So this question or this ask of a legal document or a proof is not politics. It's not the reality of politics. The reality of politics is that the Orange Democratic Movement is very much in government. Secondly, Jeff, if we characterize all the problems that Kenyans face or all the cries of young people as mere logistical issues, that we're working on them, that please follow the process, there's a bureaucracy in place, that is what failed governments do. What we have with the state is a social contract. The moment that is not fulfilled, the moment citizens are not getting what they negotiated for with their government, which is issuance of IDs at no cost, it should be. Of course, Gloria argues that there's a cost to producing it.
Yes.
Why are you double charging me? You charge me for taxes. Again, if I have to come and pay for every extra service, that is, you're charging me twice for the same thing. Then don't charge me the taxes and charge me for every other service. It doesn't make sense for Kenyans to pay twice for all of those things. So to characterize the problems that Kenyans face as mere logistical issues is to dance on their graves, is to really reduce the issues that Kenyans cry about every day as just mere bureaucratic processes that are moving. No, they're not moving. No, they're being, yes, they're being suppressed intentionally. Yes, the government of the day is not delivering on the promise that it's made to its people.
Gloria, I'll let you respond after the break, Gloria.
Okay.
Think about your answer in a couple of minutes. Narima, Mohammed, Gloria, Casmuel. Let's take a quick break, come back. Plenty more ahead. And also, lots of reactions on the magic wall. Plenty of reactions. Are you...
Including some sent on WhatsApp.
Plenty. Plenty. Keep tweeting.
See, this generation is tech savvy.
I'm telling you, these guys are so, they're on top of these. At Koinange Jeff.
At Ayub Abdikadir.
At Citizen TV. The hashtag is JKLIVE. JKLIVE takes a break. We'll be back in a moment.